Okay, hi everyone. For those of you guys who just joined, we'll wait for about 1 to 2 more minutes for more people to stream in, right? And at the same time, if you guys have any specific chart requests as well, do put them under the questions tab. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so for those of you guys who just joined us, welcome. Right, so I'll wait for about 1 to 2 more minutes for more people to stream in. And then after that, we'll get the session started. So we are doing the live analysis session today, brought to you by Vantage. And if you guys have any questions along the way as well, if there's specific chart requests that you want us to take a look at, right, please put them under the questions tab. So for today, I'll be covering mainly on dollar index, euro dollar, as well as pound dollar. Okay, so we have requests for dollar index as gold and gold as well, right? So let's take a look at gold. So on dollar index itself, I'll be covering it in the session later, but in general, I think it's still bullish, right? So let's take a look at the chart later on. Okay, I have your question. So I have the Q&A session or the panel up as well. So if you guys have any questions, right, I'll be able to see your questions. Okay, so we have requests for dollar index and gold. If you guys have any other requests as well, right, do put them under the questions tab. Okay, so let's get the session started, right? So for those of you guys who just joined, a big welcome. For today, we are covering on the live analysis session. I'm Lee Sing, right? I'm an FX strategist. So just a quick introduction of myself. I provide FX advisory mainly to institutional clients. I'm also part of the team that's recognized by the Technical Analyst Awards as finalist for the best FX research for 4 consecutive years. I also appear on radio talk shows in Singapore as well. So you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, right? So if you guys have any questions, right, for those of you guys who are here with us live, right? So what you can do if you have any questions or any chart requests, put them under the questions tab. We'll take a look at the charts together. If you're watching a recording, then in that case, right, you can also please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have questions with regards to the analysis or the content that's done on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Okay, I've got your request as well. Analysis on Bitcoin. Let's take a look at that. You're very welcome. Yes. So just a quick disclaimer before we get the session started, right? So the information presented here, it's for educational purposes only. It's not to be treated as investment advice. So do your own due diligence as well. So this is the agenda that we will be covering for today, right? So we'll first hop on to look at the key economic events that are for the week, and then following which we will be doing or rather covering on 3 trade setups. I'll be covering mainly on the dollar index, euro dollar and pound dollar. We have requests coming in for gold and Bitcoin as well. So let's take a look at them together. Right. So this would be the flow of today's session. So this would be the setup, right? So as I've mentioned, I'm covering mainly on dollar index, euro dollar, and pound dollar. We'll also take a look at gold and Bitcoin, right? So just before we hop onto the charts, let's take a look at the economic calendar first. So I'll just bring up this slide. So you can see over here, right? So for economic calendar, usually I just go to vantagemarkets.com. And then under education and tools, you can see over here, economic calendar. So this is useful, especially in this current market climate where you can see that there's a lot of interest rates decision coming up, right? So central banks hiking interest rates. So generally this would be bullish for the currency. So for example, with Fed's interest rate hike, then it helps to push the dollar higher, right? So another one would be on the inflation data as well. So inflation is right now on most of the central banks' radar. So inflation has been record high across the G7 countries. Some of the G7 countries like Eurozone, UK, and US, right? So because of all of this, this is why central banks are under pressure to raise rates further. So under economic calendar, let's take a look at this, right? So you can see that it's basically the economic calendar you can see on Vantage website. So this would be the different currencies that are impacted. So for me, I look at mainly the G7 currency. So that would be your dollar, CAD, Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar, yen, euro, pound. So that's mainly the currencies that I look at. So you can see the impact of the currencies on the left column here. And then this would be the different events. So this coming Friday, this is the first Friday of the month. We also have our non-farm payroll numbers coming up. So non-farm payroll would measure basically the health of the labor market in the US, right, to see how resilient it is. So for today specifically, this would be on ADP non-farm employment change for the US and also CAD data, right? So this would be mainly on dollar and CAD today. Later on in the day as well, we have the EIA crude oil stocks change data. So this would measure oil inventories, right? So this will affect oil prices. Yeah, so this is mainly what we are seeing for today. You can see that most of the data it's related to the dollar as well as the CAD. CAD's data itself, it's not that high impact. So you can look at the impact of this, of the currency, right? Or rather the impact of the news release from the column here. You can see this, right? So the ones with red and amber are the ones with higher impact. The ones with gray are the ones with lower impact. So this on the right of it, you can see the actual and forecasted numbers. So in general, you can just compare the difference, right? So if the actual is better than forecasted, it was good for the currency, except for inflation data. So if CPI data or for the US, it's PCE price index, right? If the actual data is actually better than forecasted, if inflation is running higher, then it pressures the central banks to raise rates further. So that's generally what we have. So you can see that for today, mainly the impact would be on, I would say a big part of it, the higher impact one would be on the dollar. You have your ISM manufacturing PMI data out later today, right? So this would be the key economic calendar, the key data release for today. So let's take a look at the chart, right? Let's take a look at dollar index for a start. Okay, so this is the chart on dollar index. So in general, I like to do it from the higher time frame, right? So using the higher time frame to identify key levels and then going down to the smaller time frame to try and find our entries. So you can see that on dollar index, if you look at it on the weekly time frame, it has been approaching the last high that we have. Probably let's go to the monthly. You can see it over here. So on the monthly time frame, it's sitting on this area. You can see this area over here. This is the resistance area. Price came in. It's sitting on this region. So if you look at it, if you're not familiar with candlesticks, you can look at it in terms of line chart as well. You can see essentially this was the previous support and resistance area. So price came in. You can see this strong push down. Price came in, respected this region as a support area before it failed completely. And right now prices are sitting on this resistance you have over here. This is on the monthly picture. We are seeing this reaction here. But if you go down to the weekly, nothing much. You can see that there's just a strong push up in terms of the recent market structure that you have over here. Prices are still forming your higher lows and higher highs coming into this region. So you can see that it's still bullish market structure going up. And you see this on the daily as well. If you look at the daily again, right, if I were to pen out the highs and lows, you can see that in a bullish market structure, prices will be forming your higher lows and higher highs. And this is the last low, right? So you can see this movement here. So this area itself, right, this low took out the previous high, and right now we are at least on the daily time frame still in a bullish structure here. So this is on the daily time frame. And if you look at the most recent move, right, so let's focus on this portion of the chart. So this is about the movement since August. So we are looking at about 3 months back, you can see over here prices are still holding on this ascending trend line. We have this region, and also for those of you guys who are familiar with Fibonacci retracement, right, you can see that this region itself, right, just before we do Fibonacci retracement, what we want to do is to identify graphical levels. You can see this region itself, this was the previous resistance area, and price broke above it and it became a support region. So this region, you can see this region here. How so? Right, look at how price interacted with this region. Price came in, we saw a rejection once over here, and then again 2 times here. You can see this area, this consolidation before a clear break above, and right now prices are sitting on this region as a support. So for me, dollar index on the daily time frame, it's still bullish because of this reason. You can see here prices are holding above the ascending trend line, and also it's sitting on this resistance turn support area. If you look at it in terms of line chart, you can see this clearly as well, right? So for those of you guys who are not familiar with candlestick patterns, if you switch it to line chart, you can see this resistance area that price came in, respected this region with this. And then again, consolidation before a clear break above and a retest of it as a support. So for me, this area itself, price is still sitting on a support region. Now that we have identified this graphical area, the next thing that we want to do is see if there are any Fibonacci confluence levels that line up here. So for Fibonacci confluence levels, essentially what we are trying to do here is to see if there are any Fibonacci retracement that lines up with these graphical levels. What I do want to highlight is that for Fibonacci itself, right, because depending on how you draw them, you can find levels everywhere, which is why it's important to first understand these areas, right? So to identify things like your trend lines, your support resistance areas. Trend lines can be a bit subjective, right? But support resistance areas, especially the horizontal ones, where price reacted and then you can see this resistance, price came in, reacted to this region, and then failed completely. Then this region itself would be the last resistance turn support area. So currently for me, dollar index is still sitting on the support region. This is on the daily time frame. Now that we have identified this, right, the next thing we want to do is to take our Fibonacci retracement. So again, for Fibonacci retracement to find support, we want to identify the lows and highs. You can see that in terms of the movement, this is the last push up before that pullback. So this would be the last low that we have, and this is the high. So when we take our Fibonacci retracement, we will start from the low and end at the high, right? So this is trying to find support. So this is what we're going to do right now. So Fibonacci retracement of this move from low to high. And these are the key levels. So you can see that in general, right, 78.6 and 61.8, they can be very powerful for trend lines. So let me just open up the magnet mode. So the magnet mode essentially helps us to capture the bottoms and tops very neatly, right? You just hover around the candles and it captures the specific point. So you can see over here, right? Let me just remove this. So these are the ones that I keep a lookout for, right? 61.8 for those of you guys who are familiar with Fibonacci retracement. This is the golden ratio. So essentially you can see that this area, this support area, it's also in line with the 61.8 retracement. So this is for the Fibonacci retracement. The other thing that we want to check as well would be the Fibonacci extension. So for Fibonacci extension, just a quick review of what it is, right? So Fibonacci extensions, essentially it's about identifying zigzag patterns. So if we want to use Fibonacci extension to try and find if there are any levels that line up with this area that we've identified for support, we are looking at zigzag patterns that look like this, or zigzag pattern that look like that. So these are the two types of Fibonacci extension or the zigzag patterns that we have to find support. So with this, you can see that this pattern that we have, it corresponds more to the pattern number 1 that we have over here, which is this one. Right, so this is the one that I've drawn. You can see the one on the chart, and this is the one that we've identified. And the reason why it's important to identify this is because we need to use the turning points to project our extension levels. So these are the 3 turning points that we need to project the extension levels. So with that, right, you can see that this is the zigzag pattern, and these are the 3 points that we need to project this extension level. So I'll take this as point 1, point 2, and point 3, and that's basically what we're going to do right now. So Fibonacci extension tool here, again, turn on the magnet mode so that captures the points nicely. First point, second point, third point. So you can see that with this, there is also a 100% extension level here, lining up here. So the common ones, just to share a bit more on the extension levels, these are the three common ones that I use, right? 61.8, 78.6, and 100. So in this example, you can see that the 100% extension lines up very neatly with this zone that we've identified. So all in all for me, right, dollar index on the daily time frame, on the monthly, it's sitting on potential resistance, but on the daily time frame, you can see that until this trend line, this ascending trend line goes, as well as a break below this resistance turn support area, for me, it's still on an uptrend in the daily time frame. You can see bullish market structure here as well, right? So with higher lows and higher highs being formed. So this is dollar index on the daily time frame. You can see this region is still sitting on support area. And then on the 4 hours as well, if you zoom in further, you can see this area here. So for me, as long as price holds above this region, we can see more upside on dollar index. So this is the last structure that we have. You can see this region, right? Essentially, this is the low and this is the high. So this is the region that we have currently on dollar index, and then this is the last leg. So if we do see a push up from here, right, anywhere within this leg itself, for me, it's still bullish market structure. You saw this on the daily time frame where prices are sitting on this ascending trend line. So until this goes, right, so if price breaks below this region, retest it and retest it as a resistance, then I think price could push further. But until that happens, right now prices are still holding on support. So the bias is still bullish on dollar index. So this is my view on dollar index, right? Let's take a look at euro dollar, right? With what we have in mind here. Okay, so this is what we have on euro dollar. So you can see that again, let's start from the higher time frame first. So nothing much on the monthly. You can see that prices are in a strong downtrend. On the weekly, you can see probably on the daily is clearer, but you can see bearish market structure in this region as well. How so, right? So in a downtrend, prices are forming a lower lows and lower highs. So if I pan out this move, you can see clearly this bearish market structure here, right? The lows and highs being formed here. So you can look at it in terms of candles. There's lower lows and lower highs coming in. That is one. Or if you prefer to look at it in terms of line chart, you can see that as well, right? If you just mark out the highs and lows, you can see these are the highs that we have over here, right? And coming into this region, this is the last leg essentially, this last leg down, right? So if we see a bearish market structure, it should continue on the downside here. So this is on the weekly time frame. If you go to the daily time frame, you can see this region itself, right? Currently prices are testing this. So we have this last bearish market structure and then the pullback over here. In terms of just looking at resistance areas alone, you can see that the current region itself, this is the consolidation before the break, right? So if you look at this region here, you can see that this consolidation here, this is the region where we saw price consolidated. We're on the daily time frame, which means that each candle represents the movement on the daily. So we'll be seeing the consolidation that you're seeing over here, right? It lasts for about 5 candles. So that's about a week of consolidation before prices started moving. And right now prices are revisiting this region again. This is a supply region for me, right? And the reason for that is because if you look at it, right? So let's focus on this region of the chart. So this area over here, right, if you look at it in terms of the smaller time frame, so let me just bring this to the 4 hours. Okay, so notice this region that we have highlighted over here. You can see that there is a support and resistance area here. And how so? Again, right, this region, you can see how prices interacted. There is demand. So for those of you guys who are familiar with the candles, right, there is demand region. Price came in, it held within this region. And then following which it failed completely. You can see that this candle itself, this candle here is the last candle where we saw that break of the support region. So if you look at it in terms of the horizontal levels, you can see that this was the previous support region where price came in consolidated and this candle held before we saw a clear breakthrough. So this candle itself is the last supply region, right, or last resistance, if you like to call that, right? So essentially you can see in terms of the line chart as well, right, the consolidation over here before a clear break and a retest, and right now prices are sitting in this region. So this is on the 4 hours time frame. So having identified this region, right, again, what we want to do next is to see if there are any Fibonacci retracements and extensions that line up here. So with this, what we want to do, so this would be the last move. the push down before we saw that pullback. So in this region itself, you can see that when price comes into this area, right, this would be the last impulsive move. So this is the high and this is the low. So the difference in terms of using Fibonacci retracement to find support and resistance is that if you want to use Fibonacci retracement to find resistance, which is what we're doing over here, right, we've identified a supply region or a resistance area that we've found on the daily and 4 hours time frame. Having identified this, the next thing we want to do is to find if there are any Fibonacci retracement resistance that lined up here. So if there are any resistance levels. So unlike what we did earlier with the dollar index, right, we're trying to find support. We need to identify the lows and the highs, using the lows as the starting point and the high as the ending point. When you want to find resistance, it's the other way around. You need to identify the high as the starting point and the low as the ending point. And the reason for that is because we're trying to find resistance. Okay, so this is what we're trying to do over here. So which is why right now our high would be from here and our low it's here. So this is the highest point. We'll take the highest point as the starting point because for Fibonacci retracement, you need 2 points. So this is the highest point. This would be the starting point and this is the ending point. So as always, right, I mentioned that I like to look at the 61.8 and 78.6. In this case, the 61.8, this region itself, you can see that it lines up with this area. Prices wick slightly above this region and it entered into this supply area, this 4-hour supply region. And the reason why we highlighted this, as we've explained earlier, is because this was the last area that reacted to demand before it failed completely, thereby creating our supply. Okay, you can see this demand region over here. Right, so price came in, consolidated. You can see this region. Let me just highlight this, right? This region here. And this is the candle that held before it failed completely. So it created the supply area, which is why we've highlighted this area here. So in terms of retracement, you can see the 61.8 is running slightly lower, 78.6 is within this region, right? So this is the area. So that's one, right? And also there isn't any specific level that lines up exactly at this area. So this is on the retracement level. But what we do know over here is that apart from just graphical levels, you have the 61.8 just running slightly lower than this region. So this is the supply, right? Another thing that we can do is, again, identify our Fibonacci extension. So Fibonacci extension has zigzag patterns. In this case, if we want to find resistance, we are looking at patterns that look like this or pattern that look like that. So these are the two patterns. In this example, you can see that this would be more relevant. So this would be similar to what we have here. So this would be the second pattern. So again, right, once we've identified the Fibonacci extension, we are using the turning points that we have over here as the reference point. So this would be the first point, the second point, and the third point. So let's do that and see what we have. So when you do Fibonacci extension on this move itself, this is the first point, second point, and third point. So same thing, right? As always, Fibonacci extension, these are the 3 levels that I use. You can see in this region or in this example itself, right? This area itself lines up, this spike that we are seeing over here, it lines up very nicely with the 78.6 extension. So this area here, this supply region. So this is on a 4 hours time frame, right? The next target that we have in terms of the support area would be this area here. Again, right, just looking at the consolidation, you can see that price came in and you saw this consolidation before that clear break above this region. If I were to highlight a specific candle, I would highlight this candle here as the supply demand region. So this candle over here, right? So this would be the support region for me. And the reason for this is because, right, one is that this is the last candle before we saw that break above it. Again, if you look at it in terms of line chart, you can see that this is clearly the resistance. Price came in, it consolidated on this region, right? This is the consolidation area before we saw a clear break above it. So this last candle that causes that break above this region, let me just bring it back, would be the demand area. So which is why I highlighted the specific candle. You can also see that in terms of the candle itself, it swept the previous low. So if you look at this specific candle itself, you can see that this candle, it's a doji, and then price essentially came in to sweep the low of this candle before it continued to the upside. So this is a demand candle for me. Right, so this is on the 4 hours time frame. Let's go down to either the 30 minutes, right? Let's try the 30 minutes time frame. So you can see that this is basically the region over here. This is, so we've identified the 4 hour region, right? The resistance area and also the demand region that we have over here. So these are the 4 hours. So let me just label this as H4. And then again, this region is also the H4 as the resistance. When you go down to the 30 minutes time frame, you can see that this is essentially what we're seeing over here, price coming in, right? And if you look at this area itself, focusing on this region itself, you can see that essentially what we have over here, it's clear demand area. So this is on the 30 minutes time frame. You can see clear support resistance levels here as well. How so, right? So if you look at this region, you can see how price reacted over here as a support region, right? You saw this bounce off twice before it failed completely, right? So this is in terms of candlestick patterns. If you look at it in terms of line chart, you can see very clear support region over here before price failed as well. So if you look at this area, you can see this consolidation, essentially price coming in to test. Maybe before that, let me just put a horizontal line across so that we can see it clearer. You can see this region, right? So let me just put this level. Oops. Okay, you can see this. Let me just put this in a different color. Let's put it in blue, for example. So you can see this area essentially, right? Price coming in to react as support region over here. And then again, and it's also sitting on a H4 resistance area or a H4 supply zone, which is this gray zone that we've highlighted. So in this area itself, right, you can see that this would be the candle. Again, if we were to highlight specific zones, right, this in terms of just support resistance areas itself, this would be the last area before the breakout. So when price revisits this region, I think that it has a good potential for a short to play to the support region that we have over here. So right now I'm just waiting for a pullback, right? So over here, I'm waiting for a pullback to test this region and then further push down here. Of course, in terms of trade management is important as well. So if we do see this pullback into this region when price reaches this area, the region that essentially drive price back into the supply, then this is when I will want to break even. So depending on how price play out over here, right? So price could just continue much lower. That's one, right? Or if we wait for the pullback, so I'll be waiting for the pullback. Right? So when price enters into this region, this is the area that I'm waiting for, and then this would be the target on the 4 hours time frame. But once price reaches the area that first drove price into the supply region, this is the area that I will want to consider at break even. So this is on euro dollar, right? You can see that in terms of specific candles as well, price came in, right? So if you look at it in terms of the candles, you can see price forming your lower lows and lower highs. And then what we have coming into this region, it's basically price coming in to sweep the previous high. So if you want to narrow it down to specific candles, right, this would be the candle itself that causes this supply region here. Let me just put it in a different color, right? So let's say in blue. So you can see that this is actually on the M30 minutes time frame, and this was also the region that swept the previous high. So yeah, so either when price enters into this region, this would be just looking at support resistance levels. Or if you want to look at it in terms of specific candles, then I will wait for price to enter this blue region that we have over here on the M30, because this is also the area where price came in and sweep the previous high that you're seeing over here. So when price is in a downtrend, you know that it forms lower lows and lower highs. But coming into this region, you can see that price came in and it reacted to this demand area by sweeping this last high before it continued to the downside. So this would be the resistance area, right? And then when price comes into this region, this is the region I will consider at break even if we do see a pullback from this area here. So this is my view on euro dollar. Let me just put this here so that we're able to review it in the next call, right? So this is what we have on euro dollar. Let's take a look at pound dollar as well. Okay, so same thing on pound dollar, right? Let's take a look at it from the higher time frame first. Let me just remove this Ichimoku clock. So you can see on the higher time frame, it's the same thing on the daily time frame, or rather on the weekly time frame. Okay, so weekly, nothing much. You still see bearish market structure coming into it. Same thing, right? Lower lows and lower highs being formed. If you go to the daily time frame, you can see again, right, the last consolidation before we saw that clear break. And also this is also driven by fundamentals when the politicians reverse the fiscal policy. So over here, right, you can see essentially what we have on this region itself is this is the last consolidation. Again, if you look at it just in terms of the interactions of demand and supply candles, you can see that this is the candle over here. Price interacted with this region. You can see that there is demand, right? So price came in, probably on the 4 hours, you can see clearer. You can see price came in, and then there is the demand region over here. So price came in, reacted with this area, reacted to demand, and then it failed completely. So once it reacted to demand and failed, it creates a supply region. So on this area itself, you can see that this would be our supply region. And then again, extended across, you can see price essentially is coming into this region, is testing this area right now. So this is just in terms of interactions of the candles. You can see price coming in to test this region. The next thing we want to do again, right, see if there are any Fibonacci retracement levels here. So again, for Fibonacci retracement, we need to identify market structure. So lower lows and lower highs being formed. You can see that this is the last high, and then we see this pushed out. So if we want to use Fibonacci retracement to find resistance, we need to identify the high here and the low here. So that's what we're going to do right now. So oops, let me put this back. Okay, so same thing, Fibonacci retracement of the move from high to low. And open up the key levels, you can see the 78.6, right, lying just slightly below this region, and also the supply region that we have above this. So we have a 78.6 resistance over here, right? So there's some kind of Fibonacci levels lying up here. So this is on a 4 hours time frame. You can see that prices are sitting on a 4 hours supply region in terms of, again, the demand area. On the higher time frame itself, because prices are still in a bearish market structure, right, there is a chance that price could push much lower. But if we were to look at it from a more conservative target, right, I would consider this as the first area, because this is the last region of consolidation. You can see this area over here. So this is the first region to consider on the 4 hours time frame, and this is the next region that we have over here. Just looking at it in terms of support resistance areas, right? Of course, there's a chance that price could push much lower, but what we do want to consider is that when we are taking these trades, we want to manage the positions. So in this case, you can see that this is again the last region. Right, this is the candle that we have over here before we saw that strong push up. So this is the demand area. Again, in terms of how this is so, you look at it in terms of the resistance area. You can see this resistance region here, where we saw that consolidation, right, before price pushed up strongly, this region. And then if you look at it in terms of candles, you can see that this is the candle that causes that breakup. So this is the region for me. Right, so if you want to highlight it in terms of specific candles, if you want to look at it in terms of line chart, I will consider it slightly higher. So basically this area of consolidation, this is one. And the next region would be this region over here. Again, right, looking at this area, you can see that there is supply, and then price reacted to supply before it failed completely, creating the demand area. So again, right, this region, this is the supply. So price came in, you can see price respecting this area, and then failing completely. So this creates a demand region here. So this would be the area here. So let me just extend this. Right, so these are the regions that we have on the 4 hours time frame. Again, we want to go down to the 1 hour time frame. You can see in this region itself, right now prices are just hovering about. It's still sitting on the support region. There isn't anything much on this, right? You have this 1 hour time frame, prices are still sitting on this region. So right now we could see one more push up to test this resistance area. So this is currently on the 1 hour time frame. You can see the support region as well. So there are two ways we can go about this. One, it's of course we wait for the pullback, right? So right now prices are still sitting on the support region, and you can see on this area itself, again, if you take a Fibonacci retracement of this move, this is the move and the pullback, right? So you start from this low and end at this high. So same thing, open up the key retracement levels. We have the 23.6, 38.2. So in this example, you can see prices are currently testing the 38.2 support. There is the 38.2%. There is this region that we have. We have our ascending trend line. So for me on pound dollar, I want to wait for a clear break below this region, right? A clear break of this ascending trend line on the 1 hour time frame, right? To tell me that this H4 resistance area or this H4 supply region that's holding, and right now supply is in control, so we could see further downside. So this is what I'm looking at on pound dollar, right? So again, let me just put a marker over here. So I think we could see more downside, but currently where prices are right now, I will be waiting for a nicer setup to form, right? Because if you see on the 1 hour time frame, it's still currently sitting on this support region, but this is not an area itself that I will go long. So this is the reason why I'm just highlighting the setup. I will wait for a clear setup to present itself for a short, right? So this is the support area. So either we wait for a clear break and retest of this region as a resistance to play to the next support area. That's one. Or we could see price pushing up to form some kind of structure over here, right? Then if price enters into this region again on the smaller time frame, you can zoom down to either the 15 minutes time frame to see the setup that we have over here. So currently on the 4 hours, prices are sitting on this resistance area, right? So this is currently what we are seeing here. So we've labeled this as a 4 hours. So this is currently what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for a clear break and a retest of this potentially to play more downside, to play further downside. This would be one region to consider, and then the next region would be this region that we have over here. Okay, so these are the two areas to consider. Let me just put this in a different arm. Yeah, so this is what we have on pound dollar. Okay, so let's take a look at gold as well, right? So we have requests for gold, so let's take a look at that. Clear out the drawing. So again, start from the higher time frame. So gold itself, because it's a dollar denominated asset, right? So it's XAU/USD. So when dollar strengthens, gold suffers as well. So if we look at it on the monthly time frame, you can see just in terms of clear support resistance level, gold is currently sitting on a support turn resistance area. You can see this demand region over here, right? There is this demand, like just looking at horizontal levels, there's this demand area. So if you look at how price reacted over here, there is demand. Price interacted with this region, right? You can see this region as the demand region, and then again over here, and then over here as well, right? Price came in, and you can see this push up before it failed completely. So if I look at it on the weekly time frame, you can see it clearer as well. Essentially, the push up, and then price failed completely. If you look at it in terms of the bearish market structure, this whole recent move down, you can see that prices are in a bearish market structure here. Why? If you look at it in terms of the highs and lows, you can see that prices are forming lower lows and lower highs. This is on the weekly time frame. Okay, so let me just remove all these drawings. You can see this region, right? So essentially on the monthly time frame, what we have over here is that we have this supply area, and then price came in, right? It was the previous demand, price came in, reacted, and then it failed completely. So when it failed completely, it created a supply region. So as usual, right, when demand fails, it creates supply. So this is from our educational series. So you can see over here, this is the supply area because this is the candle that still holds before it fails. So right now, prices on the monthly time frame, weekly, you can see that prices are entering this region. Of course, this is a huge area to consider on the smaller time frame, right? So we need to zoom in to look at the picture. So this is currently on the weekly time frame. So you can see this region, right? We've marked out the higher lows and higher highs in terms of the bearish market structure. You can see that this is the last high that we have, and we are currently within the pullback of this area. So this is on the higher time frame. We have the monthly. Let me just label this as a monthly. Okay, so what we have over here, having identified this, right, let's go down to the daily time frame. So on the daily time frame, you can see just looking at pure support resistance areas itself, you can see that this region is one area. So if I were to put a horizontal line across, you can see this region over here, right? So essentially what we have is that price came in, reacted as a support area. You can see price coming down, reacted as a support, and then we tested this region as a resistance. When it failed, you can see that price came in, tested as a resistance, and then right now it's approaching this area as well. So this is in terms of candlestick patterns. If you look at it in terms of line chart, you can see as well, right? Essentially this area or this line itself segregates the chart very nicely in half. You can see the reaction over here, and then again the reaction over here. If you look at it in terms of candlesticks, you can see that price came in and then reacted essentially to this move that we have here. So this is the resistance area, right? In terms of the candle, so again, by highlighting specific candle, this would be the candle for me, right? Again, looking at this region, this would be the candle you can see over here. So let me just put it in a different color. Okay, let's put it in blue. So again, how so, right? If you zoom in, so I do want to bring our attention to this candle itself. So focus on this region. Let's go down to the 4 hours time frame. So on this 4 hours time frame, you can see again this consolidation, right? So again, it's the same thing, right? When demand fails, it creates supply region. You look at the candle over here, you can see that price came in, it reacted to demand area over here, and then it failed completely. So which is why I highlighted this region that you see on the daily time frame as the last resistance area here. Because if you look at it in terms of the daily time frame, you can see that essentially what we have here, it's that price came in, interacted with this wick. Let me put this blue region back and remove the markings, right? So if I zoom in, you can see over here, essentially price came in, interacted with this region as the demand area. And then you can see that it failed completely. Price came in and tested this region as a supply following that, right? So which is why I've highlighted this candle. And you can see that when you stretch it across as well, currently prices are sitting on this region as a resistance. So having identified this region, the next thing we want to do is again, right, our Fibonacci retracement move. So if we want to find resistance, we want to start from the high and end at the low. right? So this is the move. You see this strong push down before that pullback. So if we want to find resistance levels on Fibonacci, we need to start from the high and end at the low. So that's what we're going to do right now. So Fibonacci retracement of the move from high to low. Same thing, right? Open up the key levels. So these are the key levels. So generally, I try to look at the 61.8 and 78.6, right? These are the ones, but it really depends on what the market have. So in this region itself, you can see that very nicely, right? The 61.8 is, let me remove this marking, right? The 61.8 is in line with the region that we've highlighted. So this itself, right, tells us that there is more than one factor that lines up over here as the resistance. So this is on a 4 hours time frame, right? Again, as usual, we want to highlight, having identified this on a 4 hours time frame, where is the next support level? So same thing, right? Next support level, if you look at it just in terms of graphical, you can see that this is the resistance area that price came in, interacted multiple times, right? You can see this wick across, price came in, it wicked above it before it pushed lower, and then price came in, respected this region again before it failed completely. So if you look at it in terms of graphical level, this is actually that last area, right? You can see this consolidation before the strong push up. So this for me is the last region where we saw price came in to basically respect this region as a resistance before it failed. If you look at it in terms of line chart, you can see it very clearly as well. Clear resistance areas being formed, right? And then price failed completely. So this is the region that we have over here. So currently prices are sitting on a 4 hours resistance area. If you look at it in terms of the smaller time frame, right? So what we're trying to wait for over here is to wait for further downside for price to push lower. So this is the overall bias for me, for price to at least enter into this region. If you look at it in terms of the 30 minutes, so let's take a look at it in terms of the 30 minutes right now. So if you look at it in terms of the 30 minutes time frame, right, what's interesting over here is that you can see that there is still no clear structure being formed. So ideally, what we want to do coming into this region is to wait for clear support, or not support resistance, but rather clear highs and lows being formed to tell us that there is a clear change in market structure coming into this region. It can be a clear break of the previous low and then a retest to show the change in market structure. That's one. But currently, where it is currently, you can see that if you look at it in terms of the demand, supply regions itself, right? You can see that this is the demand area. It's still being respected. Again, right? This area itself. So again, you can look at it in terms of, let me just put this in a different color. So this is the region. You can see that again, right? This is the same thing. Clear. You can see resistance area, resistance turn support area being respected here, right? So that's the consolidation. Price failed, and then it tested this region as a support. Let me just put a horizontal line across so you can see it clearer. It's the same region again, right? So price coming in, consolidated as a resistance, broke above it, tested as a support region, and right now it's still holding. Prices are still holding above the support region. So on the 30 minutes time frame, there's still no clear change in market structure. You can see that prices are still sitting on this support area, right? So same thing, either to wait for the support region on the 30 minutes time frame to fail, or to wait for clear market structure to be formed and price again testing this region. So this is my view on gold, right? Currently, where it is currently still sitting on this M30 demand area. So let me just label this as the M30 and probably put this in a different color. So let's put it maybe in lighter blue. Yeah, so this is the M30 support region for me, right? So until this clear support area goes, we could see more downside, but until that happens itself, right, it's basically trading in the middle of nowhere right now. So either I wait for a clear market structure to be formed and then a break retest of this region as support and resistance areas. That's one, or wait for a clear break below this demand area or the demand region that we have over here. So this is on gold, right? So right now I really don't see, there isn't that much of a nice setup, right? If the 4 hours, if we're to see more downside from here, right, the bearish market structure coming into play, then we should be seeing some clear change in market structure on the smaller time frame. This can be on the M30 minutes or the 15 minutes, but you can see right now, this is the last low that we have, right? And this is the high, right? There isn't any clear low and high being formed following which is why it's important that we wait for this region. So this is on gold right now, right? And then the last request that we have is Bitcoin, right? Before we call it a day. So let's take a look at Bitcoin. So again, right, starting from the higher time frame down first. So you can see that on the monthly time frame, there isn't anything much, right? On Bitcoin, we have potentially something like this, but this is what we have over here. No, I would consider this small, right? So this support region over here, but apart from that, there isn't anything much. So trend line can be a bit subjective. Let's take a look at it on the weekly time frame. So on the weekly time frame is the same thing. So if you look at it in terms of the interaction between demand and supply region, right? Look at this candle over here. You can see that this is the range. So I'm on the weekly time frame, which means that one movement itself represents a week. You can see this candle over here. This is the supply region, right? And then price came in, interacted with the supply region, recognized by this bearish candle before it continued all the way to the upside. So what it shows you is that when supply fails, it creates demand. So this is the demand area. So let me just stretch this across. You can see this candle over here, right? Let me just take this and there we go. Okay, so this is the demand area, and if I put it across, you can see this is currently what prices are, where prices are trading at. You can see this region, right? So this is the candle that we've highlighted, the specific candle. And if you stretch it to the right, you can see that this is currently where we are seeing this consolidation. So this is on the weekly time frame. Over here, right? So same thing on the daily. Let's go down to the smaller time frame and try and find the same thing. So you can see that on the daily time frame, prices are consolidating around this support region that we have on the daily time frame, and this region is actually taken off the weekly. Right, so this is the weekly region. You can see over here, currently where we are right now, in this phase that we have over here, you can see that prices are respecting this region. You can see this descending channel holding, where prices are still testing this area itself. So I think until we see a clear break and a retest, if you look at it in terms of the highs and lows, you can see that just in terms of the structure of the market, right, this is where we are currently. This is the last high that we have, and this is the low that's being formed, right? So it's still sitting on the weekly support region, but until a clear break, so I would want to see a clear break of this clear break above this descending trend line, and also a clear break of this resistance area. If not, where it is currently for me is still bearish, right? So this is the consolidation that we have, but until price gives a clear break above the last structure that we have over here, if you look at it in terms, again, support resistance areas, there's support area over here, price came in, tested as a resistance. This is the resistance area that you have over here. So on the smaller time frame itself, I think that we could still be seeing more downside. You can see this region itself. There is support, and then price came in, interacted, and failed completely, created resistance. And this region was respected previously here. So until this region or this resistance area go, there's a clear break above this region. For me, prices are still under downside pressure, right? So if we want to see this weekly support region hold over here, right, for more upside, then we need to see a break of this descending trend line. We need to see a clear break above this resistance area over here. You can look at it in terms of demand supply area. If you look at it in terms of line chart, it's the same thing as well, right? Look at it in terms of the horizontal line. You can see that this area has been respected as both a support and resistance. You can see a support and then as a resistance here as well. So this is my view on Bitcoin. I think that on the higher time frame, right, this is currently sitting on a weekly support. But if we want to see more upside, this region at 22,622 has to go. So it has to push higher before we can see room for more upside. So this is currently my view, right? Currently where it is right now, you can see they're still holding below this descending channel. Price could continue more on the downside. Bitcoin itself, it's also dollar related to the dollar. So if dollar strengthened too much, as we are seeing over here, right? If dollar is still on the uptrend, then we could see more downside in prices. So yeah, so this is the range that I'm looking at on Bitcoin currently, right? A clear break below 22622, right? Then this could signal more upside. So yep, so that's my view on Bitcoin. I hope that helps, right? So I think that's all the charts that we've covered for today as well, and what you guys have requested, right? So for tomorrow, we will be having our educational series, right? Thank you so much, DS, right? I'm glad that it helps. So yes, very clear. That's great. Okay, so yeah, for tomorrow we'll be having our educational series, and then on Friday we will also be doing the live analysis again, right? So do join us for that as well. We'll be covering trade setups. We'll also be reviewing the calls that were made on Wednesday, so today over here. So yeah, so I hope that this session is helpful, right? So thanks everyone, and also do check out our schedule on vantagemarkets.com/webinars. That's where we'll have our schedule. You can check out the speakers as well, right? So we'll catch you guys for tomorrow's session, right? So thanks everyone, stay safe, trade safe, and we'll catch you guys again tomorrow. Thank you and goodbye.